Hi guys, it's Mike. Welcome back to this second part of my video about Ukraine and their volunteer legion. If you haven't watched part one is about the questions that I had when I first heard about it, and I think those questions are important for everyone to ask themselves. In this video, I'm going to talk about the different reasons that people have who want to fight in a war. And you can use this in order to figure out what your specific reason is and if your plan that you have is going to take you to the goal that you're trying to achieve, or you can just listen to this out of pure interest. So of course, these principles apply to any war, not just the current one. So let's talk briefly about the nature of man. There's a difference between men in general and women in general. First of all, women are the only part of our species that is able to bear children. Men just can't do that. Men are very good at fathering children though, which means you don't need a lot of men to produce a lot of children. However, you do need women because a childbirth cycle takes at least a year. So let's take a simple math example. If you have 10 women and 10 men, and because of hostilities, you're losing 9 women, then you're stuck with basically one birth cycle per year. If, however, you lose no women but 9 men, you're stuck with 10 women and 1 man, but you could still get 10 birth cycles per year because that man could still have children with each of the women. And that would obviously be a great advantage for the survival of that species. What other advantages does a man have? Well, he's stronger, he's faster, he is willing to take more pain in combat, and he's disposable. Basically, as we just saw, he's not really necessary in great numbers for the survival of the species. So he can sacrifice himself in order to protect the women and children of the family, which is exactly what his main job besides procreation is. He is the protector of the women and the children. Now, this is genetically programmed into men. Men are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect others. Now, this programming has potential to be abused because this protective instinct can be projected, for example, onto a team, a country, or a religion. Now, why is that such a problem? The problem comes in the form of idealism. Idealism is great. However, you have to have a healthy dose of realism as well in order to counterbalance the idealism. Otherwise, your idealistic ideas will never work in the real world. The most idealistic people are young, inexperienced males. They can be influenced very easy. And that's because they lack the realistic experience to counterbalance those idealistic ideas. For example, in Germany in 1914, whole school classes were recruited by their teachers to fight on the Western Front to protect the fatherland, which led to whole classes, like the whole class of 1914, to being wiped out on the Western Front for basically no military gain at all. Another example where idealistic ideas were abused in a similar way were the Crusades. That time, they were abused in the name of religion. Very few people that actually have been to war think that war is a good solution to problems. But unfortunately, there is the quote, "Experience is what you get just after you would have needed it." So that's that. What are possible reasons for wanting to fight in a war? Number 1, to protect your family. And that is exactly the best and main reason why men or women should fight in a war. Because they are protecting their immediate family. Now, they are not going off to fight another man's war in another country. Why not? You could say, well, you're protecting families over there. Yes, that's true. So you're protecting women and children basically of the same race, the human race. However, while you're over there, you're leaving your own family and children basically without your protection. Now you can say that, oh, it's not a problem because, for example, let's say in Germany, there is no war, they are safe at home. And I will be back in a couple of weeks, months, years, who knows. And then I can go back to protecting them. That's correct. But that assumes that nothing life-changing is going to happen to you while you are fighting a war. And that is highly unrealistic because you can get wounded, you can get killed, you can become a prisoner of war, which in this conflict, if you're a foreign fighter, is not going to happen because the Russians said they are not taking foreign fighters as prisoners of war, but they're taking them as criminals. So you might go to prison for a very long time. Or if you make it out in one piece, you might have psychological trauma. all those things will affect your family at home. Even while you're gone, it will affect your family at home because they will be worrying about you. So a decision like this is not just about you. You always have to consider who else it will affect. The next reason would be to defend your country. Now, defending your country is sort of like the bigger picture of protecting your family. But here's my question. If you want to defend someone else's country, that means that defending a country must be very important to you. But have you served in your own country's military or police? Because if you haven't, then defending your own country obviously wasn't important enough for you to do that. Now that seems to me like a little contradiction. If someone does not want to or is not eager enough to sign up for his own military, but then when another military calls, suddenly they run off to think that now they're gonna defend the country and be heroes or save people. If you want to defend your country, defend your country. And if you couldn't join the military or the police for whatever reason, and there may be good reasons why you couldn't, did you train on your own in a, let's say, militia style? So did you prepare yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually to go to war? Because even if you weren't able to join your military or your police, if your country would have been invaded, you could still prepare yourself to be ready and fight as a civilian, right? As a militiaman, just what you are intending to do now in a foreign country. Another reason is you want to help others to fight evil. Now, I can totally sympathize with that, and I think evil should be fought wherever it appears. Unfortunately, that is a black and white concept, and the world is not black and white. It's grayscale. However, politicians especially, and the media as well, this is the propaganda instrument of the politicians, want to make everything a black and white issue. Why? Because it's simpler, and obviously it's much easier to paint someone as an enemy and you as the good guy if there's only black and white. If both of you are sort of like shades of gray, it becomes a little difficult. Okay, so let's take the Ukrainian war as an example. Now, this is a war where most countries agree that the Russians are the evil and everyone else is the good guys. So let's say you go over there, you get into a combat unit, you want to kill or destroy evil, and you happen in combat to come upon a guy and you shoot him. Now that guy could be a 20-year-old father of 2 kids who either only joined voluntarily because he couldn't get another job and wanted a secure job to feed his family, or someone who was even drafted and didn't want to be there in the first place and definitely didn't want to fight Ukrainians or go to war. Both of them would have really loved to go back home to their families alive, but you killed them. Now, what does that make you? Did you fight evil when you killed that person? This is kind of where the stuff gets gray, right? So you got to think very good about this, because once you go there, things are not going to be black and white, and you're not always going to be able to tell yourself that things are going to be black and white. Once you understand that things are gray, all the things you did that you saw as black and white will look differently. So you could have done things where you were perfectly fine with when you had your black and white vision, but then when slowly, with more and more experience, things turn to gray and you understand that the things you did before were not as clear cut as you thought they were. You still have to live with those consequences of what you did. Because think about it. If you kill someone who didn't want to be there in the first place, but you volunteered to be there to kill people, which one of you is more on the black side and which one is more on the white side? The next reason why people go to war is because they are looking for adventure. They want to test themselves in life and death situations and want to see if they're good enough to make it out alive. Now, this is kind of the same as if you would be going wingsuit flying or cave diving, okay? But there is not just the chance of you dying, there are other factors as well. One of them is the chance of you killing people. Again, with the consequences that can follow. I already talked about basically the mental consequences, but don't forget the judicial consequences. Because just because right now a lot of countries say that it's okay for foreigners to fight in that war, and we won't criminally charge our own citizens when they go fight in a foreign war and come back, that might change very quickly, because eventually people will be starting to ask questions. A lot of people have phones, a lot of people take videos of stuff. In every past conflict, people have been tried for war crimes because they shot civilians or committed other acts. Whether that was justified or not is not even the point. The point is that when the political climate changes, things that were okay by certain governments now may suddenly not be okay anymore because they changed their mind. And what are you to do anything against that? They can just say, well, we rethought our position and now we think differently. And now we're going to try these people for war crimes because they went to a different country and killed people over there with no UN mandate or whatever reason they come up with. Then there is a few people who will see this as an option for self-realization or initiation. Some people want to see if they can take a human life in combat because it's kind of like hunting, except that you hunt an opponent who is just as smart as you, who has more or less the same equipment with you. So it is about who beats the other one. It's kind of like the ultimate game, if you want to call it that. Hunting other human beings, armed human beings that are hunting you at the same time. This is like an even playing field, kind of like a chess game. Now the problem with war is that unless you have prepared very well for a long time, this is not going to work out good for you. Because you look at the chess game and you just barely started, and all you do is you think about your next move, and you're playing someone who's played for like 10 years. So he's thinking 4 moves ahead. Who's going to win? Well, it's not going to be you, is it? Not a problem with the chess game, but in war, you only get one time to play the game. If the other guy wins, it's over. And why do people want to see if they can do that? Because that way they could prove to themselves and their tribe that they can be relied on in combat. It's kind of an initiation. This is something that has been lost in the last generations. Because usually kids, in order to become men, had to go through an initiation ritual, which could be pretty harsh. For example, I think it's the Maasai. These guys, they send the kid out, I don't know how old they are, somewhere between 13 and 16, I think. And he has to go out and hunt and kill a lion by himself, just with his spear and his shield. And he'll either come back with a dead lion or he will be killed. But that kid, once he killed his first lion, would know that he is now a man, and there would be a clear separation between the time when he was a kid and couldn't say anything and the time that he became a man, and now he's like on equal level with all the other men. He's part of all the decision making and so on. And that's been missing for the last I don't know how long. And people, especially men, still want to feel that. They don't really understand why, or they don't really understand what is missing, but is that inner warrior that is calling to them. And they are trying to find a way to prove to themselves and thereby to their tribe, which doesn't really exist anymore in this form, that they are now men. But I gave you the example of the chess game. You can also look at it kind of like war being the Olympic Games. Being there can change you, or will change you. However, in order to be allowed to play or to participate in the Olympics, you have to qualify first. And the qualifying standards are so high that unless you've been training for at least 10 years, full time, regularly, there's no way that you're going to make it. And it's the same with war. Have you trained full time for 5 to 10 years? Are you ready? Or do you think you're just gonna go in there and participate? There are no participation trophies in war. Then there are the professionals. They do it for money. And it's one of the oldest professions in the world, the warrior. But these guys have been trained for at least 1 to 3 years. They signed up voluntarily. They signed up to the lifestyle. They committed for a long time. And when they get sent, they will go. It's not necessarily for them to defend their home country or their family. They are the strong arm of their government. As Clausewitz says, war is the continuation of politics with different means. And that's exactly what a soldier is. A soldier is a tool. A soldier is those other means. Then, finally, you have those guys that used to be professional soldiers, but are not anymore. And they miss the feeling of belonging to a team where everybody trusts each other, where everybody can rely on each other, everybody works together in a high-stress, fast-paced environment where everybody is highly skilled. And after they left the military, they lost all that. And you miss that, and you want to get that back. And it's very hard to get that kind of feeling back as a civilian, that kind of flow state and feeling of belonging. So those are two different things. Men are built to work in teams because they could only hunt in teams and they can only defend in teams. One single man can't do very much and will soon be defeated. But working together as a group is where you become successful. A group in war forms the closest bonds, even closer than family bonds a lot of times. Just like the saying, pressure forms diamonds. And war is a pressure cooker, and it forms those diamonds. On top of that, you get that flow state when you execute a mission, because you're highly trained, you know what you're doing, and you're performing in a high-risk environment where everything has to work out perfectly in order for you to succeed. It's just like a surfer that surfs big waves. Everything has to click in order for him to make that wave. And that wave could very well kill him if he makes a mistake. So the stakes are high, but his skill level is high, where he's just surfing on the edge where he can make it, where his skill and the difficulty meet up, where he has to be 100% focused on what he's doing. He shuts out everything else. His senses are hypersensible. He can take in everything that's important for the task, but closes out everything that's not important and would be disturbing him. This flow state is the perfect feeling, and you can get that as a warrior, as a soldier, especially guys in special operations. And that's why those are a lot of times the guys that go back to war zones in some other capacity after they leave the military. Now, you have to ask yourself, which of these reasons is your reason? And if you're not sure, take the time and figure it out. And then decide whether your planned course of action will actually help you to reach that goal that you have in mind. What would you consider a successful mission for you? Because if you don't have a goal, then you're just flying blind. You cannot decide whether what you're doing is actually a good idea because you don't know where you want to go. So seriously, take the time, figure out what you want to do and why you want to do it. And there are good reasons to fight a war, and I've listed you several, but it's not necessarily a good idea to fight someone else's war. So make sure you think about that before you make any decision that you can't take back. All right, whatever you decide to do, I wish you the best of luck, stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you next time.